The marketplace was loud, filled with the noise of traders shouting prices, buyers arguing, and carts rolling on uneven stones. But one voice rose above all others, a voice that broke through the chaos with pain so sharp that it made people turn their heads. "Please, someone help! My mother won't wake up!" It was the cry of a young alien boy, no older than 10. His skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, marked by pale streaks that showed he was from one of the city's lowest tribes. His small hands shook as he pulled at the sleeves of strangers, but each time he was pushed away. Some frowned, others hissed in disgust. "Go away, cursed child," one woman muttered, turning her stall away from him. "Not my problem," a man growled, shoving the boy aside. The child's eyes filled with tears, but he refused to stop. He ran through the crowd, his voice cracking, his legs stumbling as he begged again and again. "My mother! Please, she won't wake up, she's shaking. Please, someone help her." But no one wanted to hear. Whispers spread quickly. People spoke of sickness, of curses, of death. They feared touching him, feared even looking at him too long. To them, his mother was already as good as dead. The boy fell to his knees, his body trembling as he pressed his face against the cold stone of the street. His voice became softer, weaker, almost breaking, but still filled with desperate hope. "Please, someone, anyone. She's all I have." For a moment, the market seemed to move on. The noise returned. His cry began to fade into the chaos like the sound of a bird swallowed by a storm. No one cared, except one. A human traveler had been watching from the edge of the market. He wore a simple cloak, dust covering his boots, a pack slung over his shoulder. He was no hero, no soldier, just a man passing through. But when he heard that broken cry, something inside him refused to stay still. He stepped forward. The crowd parted slightly, more out of curiosity than respect. "Don't get involved," someone warned him in a low voice. "That child carries death with him. His mother is cursed." But the human ignored them. He knelt in front of the boy, lowering himself so his eyes were level with the child's tear-streaked face. "Where is she?" the man asked, his voice calm but firm. The boy blinked, hardly believing someone had spoken to him without anger. He tried to speak, but only managed a broken whisper. She's in the alley. Not far. She won't stop shaking. Please." The human held out his hand. His eyes were steady, carrying a quiet strength. "Take me to her." The boy hesitated. Could he trust him? Everyone else had turned away. But the warmth in the human's eyes was different. With trembling fingers, the boy grabbed his hand. The crowd murmured, their whispers filled with warning. Some shook their heads, already predicting doom for the human who dared to help. But the human didn't care. Together they pushed through the busy streets. The boy stumbled often, but the man held him steady. Every step was filled with urgency, with the fear that time was running out. Finally, they turned into a narrow alley, hidden from the bright noise of the market. The smell was damp, the air colder. And there, lying against the wall on a tattered blanket, was the boy's mother. She was trembling violently, her skin pale with a strange glow, her breath short and uneven. Her hands twitched as if fighting invisible chains. The boy fell to her side, clutching her arm. "Mother, I brought someone. He'll help you. Please wake up." His voice cracked with both hope and fear. The human stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied her condition. He had seen illness before, he had seen fear before, but this was something different, something heavy that seemed to spread in the air around her. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide, begging without words. The human tightened his jaw. He knew in that moment that walking away was no longer possible. The desperate cry of one boy had now become his burden. And deep inside he already knew. This was only the beginning. The boy's small hand clung tightly to the human's as they stood in the shadow of the alley. The woman lay trembling, her body jerking with strange spasms, her lips pale as though the life was slipping away from her. The boy whispered again and again, his words stumbling over themselves. "Please help her, please, she won't wake up." The human knelt beside her, his rough fingers gently pressing against her neck to feel her pulse. It was faint, uneven, like a candle flickering in the wind. He placed his hand near her mouth. Her breath was shallow, broken. She was fading. Behind them, the crowd had gathered at the mouth of the alley, their voices carried like poison. Don't waste your time, human. She's already gone. She carries a plague. You'll die too if you touch her. Better to let her finish. That tribe is nothing but trouble. The boy covered his ears, his body shaking as the cruel words rained down on him. But the human didn't move away. He stayed beside the woman, his eyes sharp, his jaw tight. I don't care what you call it, he said, his voice steady. She's alive, and that's enough. He tore a strip from his own cloak and pressed it against the woman's damp forehead, wiping away the cold sweat that clung to her skin. The boy stared at him as if he had seen a miracle. No one else had even dared to touch her. Can you save her? The boy asked, his voice trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. The human looked into the boy's wide eyes. He couldn't lie, but he couldn't crush the child's hope either. I don't know, he admitted, but I will try. The boy's tears spilled freely as he whispered, Thank you, thank you. The murmurs from the sea crowd grew louder, angrier now. A heavy-set merchant stepped forward, his face twisted in disgust. Human, leave her. This city doesn't want that filth. You'll bring her curse on us all. The human rose slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over the man. His voice was quiet but carried power. If your city turns away from a dying woman and a crying child, then maybe it is your hearts that are cursed. The merchant's face flushed with anger, but the human turned his back on him without another word. He bent down and slid his arms beneath the woman, lifting her carefully as if she weighed no more than a child. She stirred faintly, a whisper escaping her lips, though no one could understand the words. The boy gasped and reached for her hand, clinging to it as though it were the only rope keeping him from drowning. She's heavy, the human said, his breath steady, but we'll get her somewhere safe. The boy nodded quickly, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. I'll show you. There's an old place. Outside the market, no one goes there. The crowd parted reluctantly as the human carried the trembling woman through them. Some spat at his feet, others muttered dark curses, but none dared to stop him. There was something in his stride, something unyielding that made even the boldest keep their distance. The boy trotted beside him, looking up at the man as though he were some figure out of legend. To the child, this human was not just a traveler anymore. He was the only light in a world that had turned to shadow. As they moved, the human spoke without looking down. What's your name, boy? The child blinked, surprised at the question. Lior, he said softly. Lior, the man repeated, his voice firm. Stay close to me. Don't let go of your mother's hand, no matter what happens. Yes, sir, Lior whispered, his grip tightening. They walked on, away from the market, away from the stairs. The human's arms ached from the weight of the woman, but he didn't slow down. His boots struck the cobblestones with the rhythm of resolve. He had made his choice. He could have turned away like everyone else, let the desperate cry fade into silence. But instead, he carried the burden of strangers, because in his heart, he knew one truth. Sometimes, a single act of kindness could change everything. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. He would not abandon them, not now, not ever. The old alley gave way to quiet streets, where the noise of the market slowly faded into distant echoes. The human carried the alien woman carefully, her trembling body jerking every few steps as if something deep inside her fought against life itself. Beside him, Lior clung tightly to her hand, whispering words in a soft alien tongue, desperate for her to hear. Mother, please, stay with me. Don't leave me, the boy begged, his small voice breaking with each word. The human's arms ached, but he never shifted her roughly. Every movement was steady, protective. His eyes scanned the streets for danger, for a place where he could rest and tend to her. He didn't know what sickness gripped her body, but he knew one thing. If she was left on the ground again, she would not survive. They finally reached an abandoned storage hut at the edge of the district. Its wooden door hung crooked, and the smell of dust and old straw filled the air. No one had lived there for years. It was exactly what they needed, hidden and empty. Here, the human said, pushing the door open with his foot. Inside, he laid the woman down on a pile of discarded cloth sacks. Her body shook harder now, as though the effort of being carried had drained her further. Lior knelt immediately at her side, stroking her hair, tears dripping onto her face. "Mother, please open your eyes. Please, just once." The human crouched, pulling a small metal case from his pack. It was battered, scratched from years of travel, but inside were basic medico supplies. He pulled out strips of clean cloth, a small bottle of purified water, and a few herbs he carried for emergencies. He dipped the cloth into water and pressed it gently against her lips. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, a few drops slipped into her mouth. Her throat moved weakly, swallowing. "She's drinking!" Lior gasped, his eyes lighting up. But the human frowned. Her body was still shivering violently, her muscles stiffening as though fighting against invisible chains. He placed his hand on her chest. Her heart raced, too fast, like a drum being beaten without rhythm. "This isn't simple illness," the man muttered to himself. "It's something else." Lior looked up quickly, panic filling his face. "What do you mean? Will she die?" The human paused. His instincts told him this was more than fever. He had traveled many worlds, seen strange sicknesses before, but this was different. Her skin glowed faintly under the dim light, patterns pulsing along her arms. It was as if her own body was at war with itself. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I won't let her die if I can stop it." The boy wiped his tears with trembling hands. "Everyone else, they said she was cursed. They said she should be left to die. But you stayed." His voice shook, but his eyes were full of something new, hope. The human didn't answer. He pulled more herbs from his pack, crushing them into a paste and pressing it against the woman's temples. The strong smell filled the room, sharp and bitter. It was something he had learned long ago. It sometimes calmed seizures, sometimes slowed fevers. For a moment, her trembling slowed. Lior leaned closer, holding his breath. "Is it working?" The woman's eyelids fluttered, just barely. A whisper escaped her lips, too soft to understand. Lior's heart leapt, but before he could speak, her body jerked violently again. The tea. Remorse returned, stronger than before. "No," Lior cried, pressing his face against her arm. The human grabbed her shoulders, holding her steady so she wouldn't hurt herself on the hard ground. His jaw tightened. Whatever was inside her was fighting back, refusing to release its hold. "Stay with me," the human whispered, his voice low but firm, as if commanding her spirit not to slip away. "Don't you dare give up." Lior looked at him, wide-eyed. "Can you really save her?" The human's gaze stayed locked on the woman's face, his hand gripping hers firmly. "I don't know if I can," he said, his voice heavy with honesty, "but I promise you, I will not stop trying." The boy's tears fell again, but this time he smiled through them. For the first time since his mother collapsed, someone had spoken words that gave him strength. Outside the hut, faint footsteps echoed on the cobblestones. Shadows shifted against the cracks in the door. Someone was out there, listening. The human froze, his instincts sharp. He knew they weren't safe. The mother's strange condition was not just illness. Others had spoken of curses, of danger, and now it seemed someone had followed them. The boy noticed the human's sudden stillness. "What is it?" he whispered. The man's eyes narrowed. He placed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. Then in a low voice he said, "Stay close to her. Don't move." The boy nodded quickly, fear rising again. The human rose quietly, his hand drifting to the small blade at his belt. The woman's body still shook, but now there was another threat creeping closer. Saving her life was only the beginning. Now he would have to protect them both. The human stood in silence, one hand on the hilt of his blade, his eyes fixed on the door of the abandoned hut. The faint shuffle of feet outside grew louder, stopping and starting as if whoever was out there did not want to be noticed. The boy, Lior, clutched his mother's arm tightly, his small body trembling almost as much as hers. "Who's out there?" the human called, his voice sharp but steady. For a moment there was no reply. Then came a whisper from beyond the crooked door. "You should not have brought her here." The voice was cold, filled with quiet anger. The human didn't move, but his grip on the blade tightened. "She's sick. She needs help." The whisper turned into a bitter laugh. "Sick? No, human. She is cursed. And you carry the curse now too. Leave her, or you will all die." Lior's eyes went wide, his face pale. He pressed closer to his mother, shaking his head. No, no, don't listen to them. She's not cursed, she's not. The human knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice softened. Don't worry, I won't leave her. Then louder, he spoke toward the door. If you fear her, then stay away, but I will not abandon a child's mother. The footsteps retreated, fading into the night, yet the words they left behind lingered, heavy and sharp. Lior wiped his eyes. Why do they all hate us? The human looked at him quietly. He had seen this before, on other worlds. Fear was often louder than compassion. People would rather turn away, brand something dangerous, than face what they didn't understand. Because it's easier to be cruel than to be brave, the man finally answered. The boy lowered his head, his hands curling into fists. They don't even know her. She was kind to everyone. She used to give bread to hungry children even when we had so little, and now they spit on us. His voice cracked, the pain of betrayal raw in every word. The human watched him for a long moment, then he spoke firmly. What matters is not what they do. What matters is what we do. He returned to the mother's side. Her shaking had slowed slightly, but her breathing was still shallow, fragile. The glow under her skin pulsed faintly, as though her body fought its own battle. He placed a fresh cloth on her forehead, muttering under his breath, Hold on, just a little longer. But the barrier was not only the distrust of the crowd. Supplies were scarce. He had only a handful of herbs, some water, and his stubborn will. It might not be enough. He needed more. But stepping out into the streets meant facing those who believed her cursed. They would refuse him, perhaps even attack. The boy must have seen the doubt flicker across the human's face because he whispered, You're not going to give up, are you? The human looked at him sharply. No, I never give up. The boy swallowed hard, his tears drying slowly as a fragile hope began to rebuild inside him. Still, the reality was harsh. They were alone. The city had closed its doors to them. The only barrier stronger than the sickness was the wall of distrust surrounding them. And walls like these were not broken easily. A sudden knock shook the crooked door. The sound echoed through the hut, making Lior flinch. Open up, a new voice barked. Harsh, commanding. We know she's in there. You cannot hide her. The human stood slowly, blade in hand once more. His eyes narrowed, his jaw set. He glanced back at the boy and the mother, then toward the door. It was clear. The city would not forgive them. If he wanted to keep this boy and his mother alive, he would have to fight against not just sickness, but the fear and hatred of an entire people. Stay with her, Lior, he whispered, stepping toward the door. The boy's small voice followed him, filled with both fear and trust. Please, don't let them take her. The human placed a steady hand on the door, feeling the tension beyond it. His heart beat steady and strong. He had made his choice before, but now he understood the weight of it. This was no longer only about saving one life. It was about defying a world that had already condemned her. The crooked door rattled beneath the force of fists pounding from the outside. Shadows moved across the cracks of the old hut, their shapes stretching long in the dim light. Lior clung to his mother, his face buried against her arm, whispering desperate prayers. The human stood firm, his blade glinting faintly in the gloom, ready for whoever dared to enter. Open this door, the voice roared again. She cannot stay. The sickness will spread. But the human didn't open. He didn't flinch. Instead, he whispered over his shoulder, Lior, gather the blanket around your mother. We're leaving. The boy's wide eyes darted up. Leave, but where? Anywhere but here, the human replied firmly. Staying will kill her. Moving gives us a chance. The pounding on the door grew louder, the wood beginning to crack. There was no time. The human sheathed his blade, lifted the trembling woman into his arms once more, and nodded to Lior. Stay close. The boy clutched the edge of the blanket wrapped around his mother and followed as the human kicked open the back wall of the hut, the rotting planks snapping apart under his boot. Cold night air rushed in, carrying with it the sense of smoke and damp stone. They slipped out into the darkness. The alleys were narrow, winding like veins through the city's heart. Dim lanterns burned in far-off windows, but most streets were swallowed in shadow. The human moved swiftly, his steps heavy, yet careful, balancing the woman's weight without faltering. Lior scurried beside him, his small feet slapping against the stones. Behind them, angry voices rose. "They've escaped! Find them!" The boy's breath hitched in panic. "They're coming!" "Then we stay ahead," the human said calmly, though sweat already rolled down his brow. They darted through crooked passageways, past broken fences and shuttered doors. Every corner seemed to hide an enemy, every shadow a watching eye. Twice, the human had to stop and press against a wall, waiting apart. As the searchers passed by with torches, their flames painting the darkness in orange light. Lior held his breath each time, his small fingers gripping tightly to the human's sleeve. His mother stirred faintly in the man's arms, her glow pulsing weakly, as though even unconscious she was aware of the danger pressing closer. Finally, they reached the edge of the market district, where the streets thinned into broken paths leading toward the old ruins outside the city. Here, the lights of the crowd faded, replaced by silence and the hoot of night creatures. "We'll rest there," the human said, nodding toward the crumbled remains of an old stone tower. But as they approached, figures stepped out from the shadows, blocking the path. 5 men, faces twisted with fear and hate, each armed with clubs and knives. "There," one snarled. "The cursed woman and her whelp. Hand them over, human, don't make this harder." Lior gasped, clutching his mother tighter. "No, please, don't take her." The human's eyes hardened. He shifted his hold, lowering the woman gently against the wall, wrapping the blanket tighter around her before standing tall in front of the boy and mother. His hand went to the hilt of his blade again. "I won't hand them over," he said coldly. The men laughed, though there was unease in their eyes. "You'd risk your life for them? For filth?" The human's jaw clenched. "They're not filth. They're people, and she is a mother. If you can't see that, then you're already lost." The men spread out, circling. Lior's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break. He wanted to scream, to run, but his feet refused to move. The human took one step forward, his blade whispering free of its sheath, gleaming faintly in the night. "If you want them," he said, voice like steel, "you'll have to go through me." The first attacker lunged, swinging his club. The human sidestepped smoothly, striking with the flat of his blade, knocking the man to the ground with a grunt. Another came forward, knife flashing, but the human parried and shoved him back. His movements quick, precise, controlled. Though outnumbered, he fought with the focus of someone who refused to lose. Lior watched with wide eyes, clutching his mother and whispering, "Please, please win. Please don't fall." One by one, the attackers faltered, their courage broken not by the blade, but by the unshakable will of the human before them. Finally, they cursed and stumbled back into the shadows, muttering threats as they retreated. Breathing hard, the human wiped sweat from his brow, sliding his blade back into its sheath. He turned to Lior, kneeling beside the trembling boy. "Are you hurt?" Lior shook his head quickly, eyes wide with awe. You fought them all. For us." The human glanced at the unconscious woman, then back at the boy. "For her. And for you." He lifted the mother again, his arms burning with effort, but his resolve stronger than ever. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but he knew one truth. No shadow, no wall of hatred would stop him now. The night stretched long and heavy as the human carried the trembling alien woman through the ruins beyond the city walls. His arms ached from the weight, but he did not stop. Lior trotted beside him, holding the edge of the blanket that covered his mother, his small body stumbling on uneven stones. Every few steps, the boy glanced behind them, terrified that the men from earlier would return. "Where are we going?" Lior asked at last, his voice weak. "Somewhere she can rest," the human answered. His tone was calm, though his eyes scanned the darkness with sharp focus. "We'll find help." "But no one wants to help her," the boy whispered bitterly, lowering his head. The human said nothing. He couldn't argue with the truth. The city had already judged her, already closed its doors. Still, he believed not. Every heart was closed. Somewhere in this broken world, kindness must still live. At last, they reached the edge of the ruins, where broken walls leaned like tired giants and weeds clawed through cracks in the stone. Among the ruins stood a half-buried cellar, its wooden door crooked but intact. The human lowered the woman carefully and pushed the door open. Inside, the cellar smelled of dust and ash. It was dark but dry. With effort, he carried her down the narrow steps and laid her on a pile of old blankets left behind long ago. Lior knelt at her side, brushing her hair back from her damp forehead. "She's still shaking," the boy whispered, his voice trembling. "Why won't it stop?" The human crouched beside her, placing his hand against her wrist. Her pulse was weak but present. "She's fighting," he said quietly. "Her body is trying to live. We have to give her the strength to keep fighting." But his supplies were almost gone. He had only a little water left, and the herbs he used earlier were running out. He needed more. The sound of footsteps above made him tense. He rose quickly, drawing his blade again, ready for another ambush. But this time the voices that followed were softer. "Who's there?" a cautious voice called. The human stepped to the doorway, his blade low but steady. A small group stood outside, 2 women and an old man, all dressed in rough clothes. They carried baskets of food and bundles of cloth, clearly scavengers searching the ruins. The old man raised his hand slowly. "We heard fighting earlier. We thought maybe raiders, but now we see it's not so." His eyes flickered to the unconscious woman inside. She is from the outcast tribe, isn't she?" Lior tensed, ready to shield his mother. "Don't take her, don't hurt her." The human stepped in front of the boy, his voice firm. "We're not handing her over. If you came for that, leave now." But the older woman shook her head quickly. "No, we didn't come for that. Wah, you know what it's like to be pushed away. We live here because the city has no place for us either." The human hesitated, their voices carried no hatred, only weariness. "Please," the younger woman said, stepping forward with her basket. "She needs care, doesn't she? We have herbs, food, water." Lior blinked, his mouth falling open. For the first time, strangers had spoken words of help instead of rejection. He turned to the human, his eyes shining with desperate hope. The man studied the group carefully, then gave a short nod. "All right, but if you mean harm, you won't leave this place." The old man nodded solemnly. "Fair enough." Together, they entered the cellar. The women knelt beside the alien mother, unwrapping herbs and grinding them into paste with practiced hands. They applied the mixture to her chest and temples, whispering softly in old tongues. The old man handed the human a skin of water and tore cloth into strips for fresh bandages. Lior watched with wide eyes, clutching his mother's hand. For the first time, her shaking eased a little. The glow under her skin dimmed, no longer pulsing as violently. "Is it working?" the boy asked, his voice trembling with fragile hope. The younger woman nodded gently. "It will slow the sickness, but she needs rest, and she needs protection. The city will not stop hunting her." The human's jaw tightened. He already knew this. He sat down heavily against the wall, exhaustion pulling at his body. For hours he had carried her, fought and endured. Now, at least for a short time, there was shelter. But safety? That was still far away. Lior curled against his mother, his small body pressed close as though his warmth alone could keep her alive. He looked up at the human, his voice soft but steady. "You didn't give up. And now, strangers are helping us. Maybe she'll live." The human looked around at the dim sea, Eller at the strangers who had chosen compassion instead of cruelty. He let out a slow breath and nodded. "Maybe she will," he said quietly. But deep inside, he knew this was only a pause in the storm. The city would come again, angrier than before. And when they did, he would need more than kindness to keep them safe. For now, though, he allowed himself a rare thing: hope. The night had grown still in the cellar, the air heavy with the scent of crushed herbs and damp stone. Lior had finally fallen asleep curled against his mother, his small hand gripping hers tightly even in dreams. The strangers, 2 women and the old man, had left quietly after tending her wounds, promising to return with more supplies. For the first time since the market, there was silence, but the human did not sleep. He sat by the door, blade across his knees, eyes fixed on the narrow gap where moonlight spilled through. His instincts told him peace never lasted long. Too many eyes had seen them flee. Too many whispers carried their secret. And in cities ruled by fear, silence was never safety. The mother stirred faintly, a weak groan escaping her lips. The human moved quickly to her side, pressing a cloth to her forehead. Her glow pulsed again, faint but strange, like light trapped beneath her skin. "What are you fighting?" he murmured quietly. Her eyelids flickered, but she did not wake. Her shaking had lessened, but her breaths were shallow, uncertain. He adjusted the blanket around her and looked at Lior. The boy's face was streaked with dried tears, his small body still trembling even in sleep. The human's jaw tightened. He had carried them this far. He would not let the darkness take them now. A sound outside broke his thoughts. Faint footsteps. Careful. Measured. He froze. At first he thought it might be the strangers returning, but the rhythm was wrong. These steps were too deliberate, too quiet. Whoever it was knew how to move without being heard. The human rose silently, blade in hand, and pressed his back to the way. Near the door. The footsteps stopped just outside. He heard breathing, low and steady, followed by the soft scrape of metal against wood. Someone was testing the door. The human's grip tightened. He turned and glanced once at Lior and his mother. They were still, helpless. He could not let danger cross the threshold. The door creaked as a shadow pushed against it. The human struck first. He shoved the door open suddenly, blade flashing. A figure stumbled back, tall, cloaked in dark leather, face hidden behind a mask. Not a scavenger, not a villager, a hunter. The man hissed in surprise, drawing twin blades of his own. "So it's true. You've hidden her here." The human's eyes narrowed. "Who sent you?" The hunter smirked behind the mask. "The city council. They want her gone. Dead or alive, it doesn't matter. She carries danger in her blood." "She carries a son who needs her," the human snapped, stepping forward, blade ready. The hunter laughed coldly. "Then the boy will die too." With a sharp cry, the hunter lunged. Steel clashed in the moonlight, the sound ringing through the ruins. The human blocked the strike, his arms straining under the force. He twisted, forcing the hunter back, but the man was fast, trained. This was no common thug. Inside the cellar, Lior woke with a start, eyes wide in terror. "What's happening?" "Stay with your mother," the human shouted, shoving the hunter back with a powerful kick. The boy crouched over his mother, shielding her with his small frame. His mother's body trembled harder, her glow flickering violently, as though the danger outside stirred something deep inside her. The hunter slashed again, grazing the human's arm. Blood trickled down, but the man didn't falter. He pressed forward, striking with fierce precision, his will unshaken. "You'll die for them," the hunter spat. "Then I'll die standing," the human roared, his blade driving forward, forcing the hunter into the open. The fight spilled out into the ruins, moonlight painting the broken walls in silver. The two clashed again and again, sparks flying with every blow. The hunter's speed met the human's strength, neither yielding. But inside the cellar, the true danger revealed itself. The alien mother's glow brightened suddenly, spreading across her body like fire under her skin. Lior gasped, clutching her hand. "Mother, what's happening?" Her eyes snapped open, glowing with light. Her body shook violently, not from weakness, but from something powerful awakening within her. The cellar filled with the hum of energy, the air crackling as though lightning was being born in her veins. Lior's fear turned to awe. "Mother?" Outside, the human forced the hunter to his knees, blade pressed to his throat. But before he could finish the fight, a blast of light burst from the cellar, flooding the ruins with brilliance. Both men froze, turning toward the glow. The hunter's eyes widened in shock. What is she?" The human stared, his breath caught in his chest. He had thought she was dying, fragile and broken. But now, as light poured from her body, he realized the truth. She was not just fighting for life. She was something far more dangerous and powerful than anyone had imagined. The ruins shook with the force of the light. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling of the cellar, and the stones themselves seemed to hum in answer to the alien woman's awakening. Leor clung to his mother, his small hands gripping her arms, half in terror and half in awe. Her body glowed as if her veins carried fire instead of blood, the tremors no longer weakness, but energy pulsing outward. Outside, the hunter fell back, shielding his masked face from the sudden brilliance. What is she?" he shouted, his voice trembling for the first time. The human lowered his blade slowly, his eyes locked on the cellar door where the light poured through the cracks. His chest tightened, not with fear, but with something heavier. He had carried her as if she were fragile, dying. Now he realized he might be standing beside something powerful enough to shatter everything around them. Inside, the glow dimmed slightly, and the woman's eyes opened fully. They burned with light, her breath steady now, each one echoing like a drumbeat in the silent room. Her voice came low, broken, but strong. "Leor." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Mother, you're awake. Please don't leave me again." Her hand rose weakly, touching his cheek. "I tried to stay. I could hear you calling. You kept me here." The human stepped carefully inside, his blade still in his hand, but lowered at his side. The woman turned her gaze on him, her glowing eyes narrowing. For a heartbeat, he felt as though she looked straight through him. "You carried me," she whispered. "Why?" The human met her gaze without flinching. "Because your son asked. Because no one else would." Something flickered across her face, a mix of gratitude and sorrow. Before she could answer, the cellar door burst open. The hunter staggered in, rage twisting his features. "She is dangerous. She cannot be allowed to live," he roared, lifting both blades. Leor screamed, throwing himself in front of his mother. "No, leave her alone." The human stepped between them in a heartbeat, his own blade raised. "You'll touch her over my dead body." The hunter sneered. "So be it." Steel clashed again, sparks spraying as the two men collided. The human's arms ached from the fight, blood dripping from the cut on his arm, but his will was unshakable. He fought not for himself, but for the boy hiding behind him and the woman who had just clawed her way back from death. Each strike the hunter delivered was faster, sharper, meant to kill, but the hum, and met him with a shield of determination, parrying blow after blow. His breaths came heavy, his muscles burned, but he refused to give ground. Leor's eyes darted between them, his voice breaking as he shouted, "Please, don't let him take her." The words struck the human's heart like fire. With a roar, he shoved the hunter back, their blades sparking as they locked. His voice thundered in the narrow space. "She is not a curse. She is a mother, and no one will take her from her child." The hunter faltered, his mask cracking under the force of the human's will, more than the weight of his blade. For the first time, doubt entered his eyes. Behind them, the woman's glow grew stronger, her strength returning. She lifted her hand, and the air around her shimmered. A wave of invisible force rippled outward, knocking the hunter off his feet. His blades clattered across the stone floor. He scrambled back, eyes wide with terror. She's not human, she's..." The woman's voice cut through the air, steady and powerful. "I am a mother. That is all you need to know." The hunter froze, the force of her words pressing against him like a weight. The human stepped forward, blade leveled at the man's throat. "Leave, and tell the city this. She lives because I stand with her. Anyone who wants to take her will answer to me." The hunter's courage shattered. He staggered to his feet, retreating into the shadows, his voice trembling with empty threats. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." When he was gone, silence fell again. The glow around the woman faded, leaving her breathing hard but steady. She looked at the human, her eyes softer now. "You fought for us," she said quietly. He nodded once. "I told your son I wouldn't stop trying, and I meant it." Leor threw his arms around the human, sobbing into his cloak. "You saved us. You didn't let him take her." The man rested a hand on the boy's shoulder, his chest heavy with exhaustion. He looked at the woman, who now watched him with a strange mix of trust and uncertainty. The city would not give up. More hunters would come. But for this moment, in the glow of her awakening and the boy's tears of relief, they had stood their ground. It was not victory, not yet. but it was courage, and courage was enough to light the path forward. The ruins settled into uneasy silence after the hunters' retreat. The echo of clashing blades still hung in the air, but inside the cellar there was only the soft sound of breathing, shaky but alive. Leor had not let go of his mother's hand, even after she spoke his name. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes burned with a fragile light of hope. The human leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. His arm throbbed from the cut, blood staining his sleeve, but he ignored the pain. His gaze was fixed on the woman. Her glow had dimmed to a faint shimmer beneath her skin, no longer wild and violent. Instead, it pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. She looked at her son, her lips trembling as if forming words she had long forgotten. "Leor." Her voice was hoarse, but it carried warmth that filled the boy's chest. "Mother," Leor cried, hugging her tightly, his tiny frame shaking with joy. I thought you were gone forever." Her trembling hand rose and rested on the back of his head. "Your voice, it kept me here. You never stopped calling. That is why I returned." The boy sobbed openly, but this time his tears were of relief. The human looked away for a moment, giving them the space of a family reunited. Yet in his heart, he knew this moment of peace was fragile. The city would send more hunters. Their mistrust had turned into fear, and fear always grew sharper in the dark. Still, for now, the boy needed this spark of life more than anything. The woman's gaze turned slowly toward the human. Her eyes, though weary, carried both strength and question. "You carried me. You bled for us. Why, you owe us nothing." The man's jaw tightened. He could have answered with many words, about duty, about conscience, about how no one else had stepped forward, but he chose only one. "Because your son asked," he said simply. The woman's eyes softened, glistening with unshed tears. "Then you saved more than me. You saved his heart. If he had lost me, he would have been lost forever." Leor wiped his face and looked up at the human, his voice trembling. "You're our lifeline. Without you, we wouldn't have made it." The human crouched down, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No, Leor, your strength kept her alive. You never gave up." The boy blinked, startled. "Me?" "Yes," the man said firmly. "Every cry, every step you took, it kept her fighting. Don't ever think you are small or powerless. You carried her in ways I could not." Leor's chest swelled with pride, his tears slowing. He turned to his mother, gripping her hand tighter than ever. "Did you hear that? I helped save you." Her lips curved into a faint, trembling smile. "Yes, my son, you saved me." The air in the cellar grew warmer, as though her awakening filled the space with something more than light, something human could not name but could feel deeply. It was life returning, not just to her, but to all of them. But the human's ears caught a faint sound beyond the ruins, distant horns carried by the wind. His body stiffened instantly. He had heard such horns before, and they never meant peace. "They're coming," he muttered, rising to his feet. The woman's weak voice called to him. "Then leave me. Take Leor and go. He must live even if I cannot." "No," Leor cried, clutching her desperately. "I won't leave you. Don't say that." The human shook his head firmly. "We leave together, or we don't leave at all." The woman stared at him, stunned by his certainty. No one outside her tribe had ever spoken such words. For so long, she had been seen as cursed, as less than nothing, and yet this stranger, this human, had made her life worth fighting for again. She squeezed Leor's hand, her own trembling slowing. "Then I will not give up." The human bent down, lifting her once more in his arms. Her body was weak, but this time she leaned against him not as a dying woman, but as someone holding on to life with every breath. Leor hurried beside them, his face determined. "I'll guide us. I know paths outside the ruins where no one will look." The man nodded. "Good. Then we move now, before the horns bring more hunters." As they stepped into the moonlit ruins, the woman whispered softly, her head resting against his shoulder. "Human, you gave me back my son, and you gave me back my life." He did not answer, but his grip tightened around her. For Leor, her awakening was the spark of life. For the human, it was the proof that his choice, to act when no one else would, had meaning. And though danger still hunted them, they walked forward together. Not as outcasts, not as cursed, but as a family bound by courage. The night air was cold as the human stepped out of the ruins, the alien woman resting weakly in his arms and Leor hurrying close by his side. The sound of distant horns echoed again, rolling across the broken city walls like thunder. Each call was followed by the faint clatter of marching boots. The hunters were coming, not just one, but many. Leor's heart raced, but he forced himself to stay steady. His mother was awake now, even if only barely, and he refused to show fear in front of her. "We have to keep moving," he whispered urgently. "There's a path by the riverbed. It leads out of the city." The human nodded once. His steps were steady, unshaken by exhaustion or the weight he carried. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but his will was harder than stone. He had chosen this path, and he would walk it to the end. As they moved through the ruins, shadows shifted. The glow of torches appeared in the distance, bobbing like fireflies in the dark. Voices carried through the air, angry, desperate. "There, they went this way." The human quickened his pace. "Stay close, Leor." The boy tightened his grip on his mother's hand. "I won't let go." The woman stirred faintly in the man's arms, her voice no more than a whisper. "Leave me. I will only slow you down." The human looked down at her sharply, his voice low but fierce. "No. You've carried enough alone. Now I carry you." Her glowing eyes softened, wet with tears she could not hold back. For years, all she had known from others was rejection, fear, hatred. Yet this human, this stranger, had stood when all others turned away. She leaned her head against his shoulder, too weak to argue, but in her heart, something long broken began to heal. They reached the riverbed at last, the ground sloping downward into shadows. The rushing water muffled their footsteps, and the reeds offered cover. But as they made their way across, a new sound rose, the clatter of arrows being notched. From the ridges above, hunters appeared, their bows drawn, torches lighting their cruel faces. Their leader stepped forward, shouting, "End it now, human! Hand her over or we'll shoot you all down!" Leor froze, panic rising in his chest. He pulled at the human's sleeve, eyes wide. "They'll kill us!" The human set the woman down gently against a boulder, turning to face the hunters. His blade sang as he drew it free, gleaming in the firelight. He stood tall, his figure a wall of iron between the hunters and the family behind him. "If you want them," he shouted back, his voice cutting through the roar of the river, "then come and take them." The hunters loosed their arrows, black streaks against the night. But the woman's glow flared again, her weak body summers. Owning the strange energy within her, a shield of light rippled outward, deflecting the arrows into the water. The hunters cursed, stumbling back in fear. "She's not dying," one whispered, panic in his voice. "She's awakening." The leader growled, his courage wavering. "She's too dangerous to live. End her now." But none stepped forward. The glow around the woman and the unshakable stance of the human froze them in place. Leor stood, clutching his mother's arm, his small voice rising clear and strong. "She's not a curse. She's my mother, and he pointed at the human. "He saved us when none of you would. You call yourselves protectors, but he's the only one who had the courage to help." The boy's words rang out, cutting sharper than any blade. The hunters shifted uneasily, their certainty unraveling. The human stepped forward, his voice steady and cold. "Go back to your council. Tell them this family lives because I stand with them. And if they send more hunters, I will stand again, and again, and again." The silence that followed was heavy. One by one, the hunters lowered their bows. The leader spat on the ground, his pride broken. "This isn't over." But his words carried no weight now. With a signal, they retreated into the night, their torches fading until only darkness remained. The human turned back to Leor and his mother. The boy's eyes shone with tears, but this time they were tears of joy, not despair. "You kept your promise," Leor whispered. The human knelt beside them, sheathing his blade. His tired face softened as he met the boy's gaze. "And I always will." The mother reached for his hand, her touch trembling but warm. "You gave us more than life. You gave us hope." He squeezed her hand gently, then placed his other hand on Leor's shoulder. "Then hold on to that hope. no matter what comes. The horns had gone silent. The night was theirs again, if only for a little while. The three of them, an alien mother, her son, and the human who had refused to walk away, sat together at the edge of the river, bound not by blood, but by courage and choice. For Lior, it was the promise of a future where his mother lived. For her, it was the promise that not all hearts were cruel, and for the human, it was the promise he had made to himself long ago, to stand where no one else would.